Hi, I'm Eric, and I'm a social studies educator, historian, and host of this, the Everything is a Primary Source podcast. I'm also an avid collector of popular culture artifacts. I love what I find at thrift store outlets, garage sale leftovers, and what I spot just making my way around the built world. I enjoy sorting through boxes of free books and magazines, not to mention online collections like Internet Archive, and of course the Library of Congress. But you don't need to spend your time digging through bins or following online rabbit holes to get a look into the past. The movies and TV we watch, the books we read, and the games we play are all documents of the past. So is fashion, food, music, toys, even the roads we travel on and the places we live and work in. Everything is a primary source. This podcast is the result of exhibiting these kinds of artifacts in public, getting passersby to select an item they connect with, and then chatting with me to see what it says about the time, place, and people who made it. The conversation you are about to hear, therefore, is your history, my history, our history, through popular culture. I'm so happy to be with Kevin from Fairport, New York, and you're here from, well, I just said it. You're representing a couple different things at the conference today, not only your high school, but teaching the Primary Sources Network.
I do. Thanks, Eric. So my full-time gig, I'm a high school AP World History teacher in Penfield, New York. That's what I do, 7 to 7 every day, it seems like sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
And then in my little bit of spare time, I work with the Library of Congress Teaching with Primary Sources program. And I help teach the TPS Leadership Institute, where we work with other educators and help them to navigate the Library of Congress website, look for sources, and then equip teachers with the inquiry strategies to use those primary sources in the classroom and get their kids engaged, not only with the history, but get the kids talking about the sources as well.
And I loved your institute. I can't promote it anymore. I say, go to use what they have over the summertime. I looked forward to every meeting because it was like being a student again. We got to use what the Library of Congress has and then refined through, because the Library of Congress is not necessarily just for teachers, it's for everybody, but the TPS network invites teachers to learn how to maximize what they have to offer for your classroom for the benefit of social studies. So we were just talking before we hit record that we're at the social studies conference. It's not the history conference. As social studies teachers, it's more than just the past. It's what kinds of things do you do even in one class? We cover it all, don't we?
Oh my gosh, yes. As a social studies teacher, it feels like we do it all. You mentioned the past, the history. But it's culture, it's storytelling, it's taking people's experiences and making them come alive for the kids. And certainly the primary sources help with that because they give voice to people of the past.
Yeah.
It's not just a picture on a screen with a few little bullet points about this person's life. Whether it's the audio recordings, whether it's poetry or a speech, or it's making that person's story in some way, shape, or form come alive. And that's what's so exciting for me about it, not only as a classroom teacher, because I can share that passion with my students and get them engaged and tell those stories, but also with the Leadership Institute. Having the opportunity to learn from educators of all walks of life. We work with not just your traditional K-12 classroom teachers, but community educators, preschool teachers we've had a chance to work with. And personally, too, it is very professionally stimulating and exciting to be engaged in the work.
What I liked about our meetings especially is exactly what you're just saying. It's everybody convening around one topic each time, and even though we were on Zoom, it still promoted a lot of conversation and insights that people, for example, you might give us a task of look at this section of a photograph and what are your observations that you have to make, and individually you might come up with one or two, but then somebody else from another part of the country with a totally different background, totally different story to their life, sees things in that exact same thing that you would never have thought to look for. And then when you share those perspectives with each other, there it is. That's social studies. It's not, just media studies.
Well, and that's the beauty of it is you can look at something, 10 different people can look at something and see 10 different things. So we all come at it with our own perspectives, and that's something I try to share with my students is, we can all look at something and that source can tell something different to each individual student, to our adult learners in the Leadership Institute. That's the beauty of letting the sources tell the story.
Right.
And it also provides an opportunity for students to ask their own questions, to want to learn more, to dive deeper. When, as the teacher, you're just I like to say, the sage on the stage, so to speak. The kids are just getting my perspective and my point of view. But when you make the focus about the people in the past and their words and what they had to say or what they drew, or you're really giving the kids an opportunity to develop their own critical thinking about it, and that's really what it's all about, and that's our job as teachers.
With a lot of our technology that we have in our classrooms, everybody has a board in the front of the room, some kind of screen. We can project things. We can remove ourselves a little bit and, not necessarily get into a desk next to a kid, but be part of their observation work, and like you said, just be one of several voices as you look at a document or an image or listen to a recording together, and give them agency, give them that value, and confirm what they have to say is, yeah, that's a great point. I never thought of it that way. Good job. You don't have to, it's not a right or wrong type situation.
Well, certainly, and from the teacher perspective too, when you teach students this way, I'm always learning from my students something new, and that's what keeps it exciting for me as well. Because, as we said, they have their different perspectives. They might see something that I've never seen before in that source, and so that gives me that light bulb moment as much as it does my students as well.
One of my favorite primary sources, I'm sure you're familiar with it. It's a painting from 1846, 1848 called War News from Mexico. They use it all the time. It shows a guy looking at a newspaper and all these people crowded around him. He's on the steps of a hotel and everybody's looking at the newspaper with him. And I use that when I teach American history every year, and we do the exact same thing where I project it and I say, you have 1 minute to scan this image and try to identify something that means something, right? A symbol, some kind of, and without fail, every year, at least one student brings up something totally new, whether it's seeing something that nobody else has ever seen or seeing it in a certain way. And one of the most profound responses I ever got from a student who fittingly went on to go to an art school, I think maybe even here in Boston. She said, the layout of the people looks like the map of the United States.
Oh, wow.
It's like you can see, and I'll just call it up for you so you can...
Yeah, I'll have to go back. I have to see this again now. Well, and while you're doing this, one of the things that, one of the challenges as a classroom teacher with primary sources, it's so easy for students to just jump to a conclusion.
Right.
And miss some of those finer details. So as you just pointed out, these strategies encourage kids to actually spend a little bit of time analyzing the document here.
And recognizing something like fine art, unlike a snapshot, is everything's intentional. when a painter, in this case, Richard Caton Woodville, took his time with this. He wanted to communicate a message. And so what she recognized is, first of all, the social hierarchy is represented in this.
Certainly.
But with the African, people of African descent at the bottom right, the southeast.
Yep.
The woman emerging in the northeast, Seneca Falls.
Thinking of the Seneca Falls and suffrage.
And then moving to the west. And with war news from Mexico, really it was the center of the country, it was Texas and the surrounding areas that were most concerned about this. It was that Polk-ism, all the
Sure.
expansionists, they were the ones. And if you notice it, when you radiate, and here you have...
I just noticed the arm almost reaching for the west.
Right, yeah.
On the left
so
side of the
that's an
image
observation here. I've always wondered what he's doing, and I like that you put it that way, of reaching for the west rather than... It's everything here is intentional, and I think that one of the reasons an artist makes something like this is so that we will continue to evaluate it.
Well, and that's amazing that one of your students picked up on that, but that's exactly what I was trying to say. Maybe you put it a little more eloquently, but you walk away from it with something different, no matter how many times you use it with your students.
What this activity and what I'm doing right now has proven to me, because I talk to people of all ages doing this podcast, drop-in podcast thing. One thing that's proven to me is that our educational system, including social studies, critical thinking stuff, is very strong. We don't give it ourselves enough credit. We don't give the teachers who've come before us enough credit, I don't think. Where a lot of times we're in crisis, these kids aren't learning anything. Like, they're learning it. They just might not always have the opportunity to show that they're learning it. And
we box them into an assessment format that stifles that creativity.
And so instead of saying like, yeah, I'm going to show you that I'm paying attention, that I'm taking this all in, but it might not show up in a multiple choice fill in the bubble Scantron.
Well, and to your question a few minutes ago about what is social studies and what do social studies teachers do, an image like this not only could you use to teach about the war, about westward expansion, but you could use this as an avenue to teach about social roles in American society at the time too, and go even further into this and use a source like this almost as a springboard to your unit about pre-Civil War America, let's say.
It's, there's, in fact, the historian and Professor Alan Taylor, I don't know how much control, I guess I could ask one of the publishers in this building, authors have when it comes to their cover art, but his most recent book uses this as the cover art, and it's about Western expansion and things like that, but it's like everything else. It's a teaching tool.
It is.
So
it absolutely is.
Let's segue now.
Elvis.
This will be chopped up. So you spotted this last year in Nashville.
I did, yes.
And this, I actually was the librarian in my school that handed this off to me with a bunch of other stuff. And I'm like, you don't want this? This is so cool. It's a menu, Souvenir 1971 complimentary copy menu from the International Hotel in Las Vegas, Nevada. And then when you open it up, you get to see, this is to me the biggest surprise. When I see Elvis on the cover of a menu, I'm picturing fried peanut butter jelly sandwiches, banana sandwiches, or bacon stuff. It's champagne and wine lists. There's appetizers, a seafood cocktail. Not the kind of stuff, A, that I would expect at a rock and roll show, B, at an Elvis rock and roll show.
Right.
But I love ephemera like this because it's another tiny slice of life that...
I don't think that's quite enough stars.
Absolutely, and you mentioned it a minute ago. It was
back in the day. There you go.
It was this source that actually helped us make a connection last year to begin with in Nashville at NCSS. And now here we are talking about the Elvis menu. But it also, I think, gives you a little bit of a window into Vegas in the 60s and 70s was still a growing city.
Yeah.
Right? And bringing Elvis into Vegas for his residency then was a major attraction to help the city grow and helped it to sort of become what it is even still today. And this kind of gives you a window into perhaps who some of those Vegas audiences were.
Yeah.
It wasn't the concert goers that you see on the lawn at concert shows today. It was people who were going for dinner and a show.
And it was, I mean, of all the places in the country that, not quite a planned city, but at least one that literally grew up out of the desert, Las Vegas has, I've never been, but it seems to be reinventing itself all the time. You know, and there's almost like, you know, sort of like if you look at a rock formation, you can see the eras and the different kinds of conditions. It was like, it seems like the different sections of Las Vegas represent eras.
The different eras.
You know, the Strip, I guess, is like more, and one side of it has the older, you know, 50s and onwards casinos, and then you go to the other side and it's much more modern and almost like theme park-ish, and it seems to attract, but it looks like in this era they're looking for, would you say this is a sophisticated audience or like a pseudo-sophisticated audience that they're going for?
Did you know that Everything is a Primary Source now has a series of short videos which, like the podcast, teach social studies concepts through popular culture? Check out the Everything is a Primary Source Finds playlist on YouTube for quick overviews of the artifacts I uncover at Goodwill outlets, pick up from the side of the road, or resurrect from my youth, because I don't throw much out. These are great class starters for teachers, and because each clip ends with citation, they're great for students too. Furthermore, EPS Finds episodes become the starting point for the open source Everything's a Primary Source project, which encourages you and your students, if you have some, to add to the conversation. Or you can just enjoy them as you would any one of the other billions of clips on YouTube. It's up to you. Go to YouTube and become a subscriber to the Everything's a Primary Source channel today. Now, back to the conversation.
So context, right? Context matters. I think the dinner, Elvis always used to do 2 shows a night in Vegas.
Really?
He did a dinner show at like 8 p.m. and then there was always a midnight show later on in the evening.
He was a night owl, right?
He absolutely was, yeah. It's kind of which came first. Was he a night owl and then did the late shows, or did the late shows make him a night owl? But I think the dinner shows, you look at this menu here, the intended audience is certainly a little bit more of a sophisticated, fine dining, come in and see the show. It's almost like the meal was sort of the first attraction. Oh, we'll see Elvis while we're sitting here eating. And from what I know about Elvis, that was always a frustration. You'd be sitting up there performing on stage, and people are cleaning their glasses, and almost like you're at a wedding, and someone's giving their speeches and the dances, and everyone's sitting there enjoying their glass of wine and their lobster tail, looking at the menu here. And
so the midnight show is probably, from his perspective, these are my real fans.
These are my real fans. These are the people who really came just for the show. There's no meal involved. And Elvis was always a little bit lighter and more into the midnight. I say night; they're both nighttime. Teacher perspective, 8 o'clock is nighttime.
Right.
But
that's bedtime.
And that is bedtime. But the midnight shows were always more of the laid back ones, I think.
And it got to be more himself. I imagine that he's not trying to be part of a marketing package for the city of Las Vegas,
certainly,
as this would go. So I think, obviously it says right on there, souvenir menu. So the idea was to take it with you.
Take it and go, yep.
And on the back they included a few advertisements for some records. The man had no shortage of records. I didn't bring it today, but I should have. Somebody made playing cards, Elvis playing cards. I found them, like I find a lot of my stuff at the Goodwill by the pound bins.
Sure.
And I was excited because I'm like, oh, Elvis, cool. It was the most shoddily done version of any kind of merchandise that It was clear that somebody just was at one of these shows and just took a picture it was all the pictures on the cards were from the exact same perspective.
Wow.
And like half of them aren't even flattering. It's like mid, he's not even like this is a nice picture on the cover.
It's not a portrait. It's not.
It's of the show itself that you're about to watch. You might very well see something like this. The ones on these cards, it's like he's making
a goofy face,
and
it's not flattering at all.
Somebody, I guarantee you, they sold those either outside of Graceland, right, out of the back of their car or something.
I'm picturing a little table on the street or something like that.
Get your Elvis stuff, yeah.
Right.
Or in Vegas somewhere on the Strip, so that somebody didn't get their menu or forgot to. Oh, I got a playing card. And then they open it like these are the.
And what's more Vegas than playing cards?
Right. So that actually confirms that it was probably in Las Vegas that they sold it.
Well, and did you see the Elvis movie that came out 2 years ago?
Not that one. I saw the Priscilla one last year, but I didn't get to see it was a Baz Luhrmann.
The Baz Luhrmann movie.
Yeah.
You talk about another film you could use for culture.
Yeah.
But one of the things that they emphasize in that film is that Elvis's manager would sell anything and everything with Elvis's name and likeness on it because people bought it. People wanted anything that, any sort of artifact, souvenir, primary source, with Elvis's name and picture on it.
And so that movie and any other movie about Elvis are also primary sources. Like whenever a historic figure, anybody has a film made about them, you always have to ask the question, why now? Right? What is it that you're trying to do with that now? Elvis has regular movies, TV movies, documentaries. There's a whole thing about. He has basically a theme park at Graceland. It's gotten to that point now, where there's other contemporary artists of his. They don't have anything, right? Yeah, sure. So it's when it comes to the movie, who is the intended audience of that? Was it trying to appeal to a younger audience to show them who this guy was, or was it?
That's a great question. I feel like it has to be geared towards a younger audience because think about how many people are alive today that were not alive when, even when Elvis passed away in '77. I'll give away my age. I was born in 1985, so Elvis was long since gone even when I was born. So I think it's an opportunity to connect the music with younger audiences. And it's amazing how many of my students have even seen the movie. When I talk to them, oh yeah, you saw it, because in my classroom I have a bust of Elvis in my classroom.
Nice.
And and it gets the kids talking.
Yeah.
Oh, you're an Elvis fan, or oh, I saw the Elvis movie when that came out. That was a really good movie. So I think it definitely helps connect some of our middle school, high school students with a whole generation of music that they might not otherwise be familiar with. And certainly having Tom Hanks in the movie doesn't help, or does help, right. with an actor of his high regard.
And people will watch Tom Hanks movies.
Exactly.
Especially to see just how versatile he is.
Exactly.
As an actor.
So I think it represented a great opportunity to connect younger learners, but you also had your older learners audience. You have your older audience who grew up listening to Elvis Presley. That I have no doubt it probably gave them a chance to relive much of their childhood or younger adult experiences.
And see it through a different lens, because Baz Luhrmann does a different kind of movie than most directors. It's very stylized. There's lots of, I think about like his version of The Great Gatsby. They incorporate modern music and themes and put it into the 20s and partly I think for a teenage young adult audience to be like, look, this might be something old, but it still has connections to what you like.
And to that point, a lot of the music in the film were mashups with modern artists.
Yeah.
Some of the Elvis songs were turned into mashups with rap music and hip hop, and so I think that also was very strategic with Baz Luhrmann to connect with younger audiences today.
Because I think about, there's other artists that don't get anything. They've tried and failed. The one I always think of is the Ramones. They're my favorite group, and for years they were like, we're going to make a Ramones movie. The future generation needs to know about this band. At this point, I think it's too late, because it's a fandom that is very gatekeeperish. Unless you get it exactly right, they're going to hate it. There's other ways to get their music to stay alive, and that would be incorporating it into, their logo is everywhere. People borrow, because it's the presidential seal, but it's also, other bands, other things will use the block lettering at the top and then put names around it like the band did. And so they kind of live that way. But, putting their songs into other media, commercials, TV shows, movies, might be more fitting for that group. Whereas Elvis, as this thing indicates, while he was alive, and like you said about his manager, it was like, no, we're going to package it every way possible.
Right.
So the legacy will be always with us. It's not something nobody's gonna have to scrape it together 20 years later.
Done.
It's like, yeah, it's institutionalized now. It's part of our system.
And that's a good point. As we've been talking here, I've kind of been asking myself, well, then why Elvis? Why are all these films still being made and all this attention? And you might be onto something there as far as how Elvis was marketed as more than just the music.
Yeah.
While he was alive.
And that even predates his, back with Sun Records. He was recognized as being a white kid who could sing and perform like a black kid.
Yep.
And Sam Phillips recognized that. He's like, there are a lot of Elvises that I could pull from, but this is the one that could actually sell.
Yep. And you think about that in the context of 1950s America and American culture at the time, and just the controversy around. So many people thought before they saw Elvis, they thought he was a black artist.
Yeah.
When they only heard him on the radio. And so you think about strategic decisions with Sam Phillips and picking Elvis. It almost makes you wonder, was Elvis an accident?
Right.
That he's clearly very talented, but you look at the story of he just walked into Sam Phillips' on studio one day and he just seemed to have the right sound. And
it's very organic, and things back then they tended to be. It wasn't, and as we're talking, we're in Boston, so I might as well bring up the New Kids on the Block, because they're not usually compared to Elvis necessarily, only to the fact that they were the second. So New Edition was a Boston group of African-American kids, and they had the same producer as who went on to bring the New Kids. And because of New Edition's success, by the 80s, that was the racial divide was not there anymore when it came to music. When people started hearing New Kids on the Block, they assumed they were also African-American kids.
Right.
And they were probably more so than New Edition, and I hate to say it, but probably because of the color of their skin, they were packaged all the time. Posters, T-shirts. The music was almost secondary to the New Kids on the Block. And so in a way, they share that relationship with Elvis, with being, a packaged version of something that exists on its own.
Almost connecting someone trying to connect specific target audiences. It almost seems like, and bridge that, in this case, racial divide.
And it's amazing what a menu from 1971 can stem for a conversation.
Oh, absolutely. And that's a great example of just the story behind the source. And I'm sure we could talk for another hour about how much more here, but this is a wonderful source. I can't believe your librarian was just going to get rid of it.
Well, she used to have, I don't know if she still does, but she used to have somebody from the community that would just give her things like this, and so she didn't really know what else to do with them other than give them to me, because I'm the guy that takes everything.
Right.
And I think it was in that same collection of things, she had the Union Leader late edition from November 22nd, 1963, when President Kennedy was killed. And it was just like, I would think, somebody obviously saved this.
Right.
But why did they just, at the last minute, get rid of it? Same thing with this menu. It's like, so you saved it for all this time, but then at the last minute, you're like, I don't care anymore.
Well, and, we talked earlier about what do social studies teachers do. You look at something like this, you could use an Elvis Presley menu from 1971 to teach economics.
Yeah.
And you start looking at even some of the food prices on here. Seafood cocktail for $1.50. Baked lobster tail, international for $15, and a slice of cheesecake for $1. Where are you going to find that today, right?
And how much of those prices was getting those things to the desert?
Right.
Fresh.
Yep.
Or frozen or whatever. But
and how did this compare to prices, around other parts of the country, and use it to teach inflation or supply and demand? There's so much you can do.
If you were to go to Boston in 1971, how much would the difference be between lobster here and lobster in Las Vegas?
Right.
And you could sculpt, and side note, that's what my pedagogy is all about. You can sculpt an entire lesson just using those kind of connections, and to bring it back home to what you do, Library of Congress is the place that can happen, right?
Absolutely.
The presentation is there. It's and TPS Network does a nice job of teachers putting together their own sets of documents that you can use with a theme, but potentially a teacher could really just use that entire site with their students, and okay, I have this physical thing in my room, I'm using this. Why don't we look up other things from 1971, find other menus, or find really anything else from that same era, maybe other Las Vegas things, and build that story.
And the phrase we like to say is to go down the Library of Congress rabbit hole, because it really does. That's the power of using primary sources. It engages the kids, encourages them to ask more questions. I shouldn't say just kids, your learners, whomever that may be. And you never know what you might find in the Library of Congress. And it's that whole, one thing I really believe in is lifelong learning and just always being curious.
Yep.
And the Library of Congress is great for that.
And it's a good rabbit hole to go down. It's not, you're going to always find something enriching, no matter, what link you click on that site.
Right. There's always something new, something different, and something for everyone.
Yeah. Kevin, I'm glad that we made this work. I'm glad we got to
Me
make
too,
this
Eric.
happen.
I've been looking forward to it.
It's great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for having me.
Popular culture, by definition, connects and unites us, and proves that people of different backgrounds, in fact, have a lot in common with one another. I hope you enjoyed this conversation, at least in part, for that reason. If it connects with you and you'd like to add to it, or any of the podcast episodes, just visit everything-history.com and search for the Everything is a Primary Source project, which can be found in the classroom section of the website. We'd love to hear what you have to say. Be sure to rate and share this podcast wherever you are listening to it now, and follow Everything as a Primary Source on social media, including YouTube and especially Instagram. Thank you for listening to the EPS podcast, where everything is a primary source.